And we are live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Today, curriculum session number 3 already. And today we have a very special topic and a very special guest. Today is all about Amazon. I think just looking at the landscape, there is no one channel that has created more buzz around being on there right now. It is slowly replacing Google as the #1 destination for product searches. They should tell you everything about the importance here. And it is my pleasure to be joined today from one of the absolute experts in the industry, Jimmy Barber from One Stone Solution. Thanks for joining, Jimmy.
Awesome. Good morning, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah, as you can tell, Jimmy sits in Denver right now. We are in Malaga, so we are spanning 8 hours of time zone right now. Maybe leave us a quick note in the chat from where you are joining in right now. It will be interesting to see if we have more of the European side or the US side on Amazon here. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about our guest today. As I said, Jimmy Barber, VP of Client Management at One Stone Solution. And Jimmy, we talked about this briefly. You actually had your very first sale on Amazon in 2011. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. I started kind of as a little bit of a side gig. I had just started college and was selling on eBay and Amazon, trying to figure things out. And it was much simpler, much more grassroots back then, it felt like. But I had no idea what I was doing. But it's one of those things you can tinker around with, and got something sold. So we'll never forget that one.
I do remember eBay back then was more of like almost like a second hand, a Craigslist nowadays, Idealista, or what does it mean? Anuncios here in Spain right now. What was the first product that you sold?
Camera equipment. My wife runs a photography business, and that's actually how I started selling online. More predominantly was selling camera stuff, random lenses and cameras and whatnot. So now it's becoming much more restricted because Sony doesn't want some random guy out of his college dormitory selling their equipment online. So it's changed a little bit, the landscape has.
Cool. You said that selling online is the Wild West of retail right now. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? That's an interesting statement to make.
Yeah. It's one we talk about a lot, that, e-commerce, I feel like, is a lot less talking, a lot more walking, in that, like, it truly is, get in there, get your hands dirty and break stuff and learn from how it breaks. And I think that that's just something that's a little bit unique to the industry, and at least the time and place where we are in the industry, that it's just so prevalent that it is, the rules are not set, the rules change. And if you know kind of the nuances of the platform and or, kind of some of the secrets to win, is that, you can truly win even though you may be the smallest guy in the room. Which is just unique. I don't think in any other kind of sector like that in brick and mortar, you can't just walk in and become the #1 seller overnight. But on Amazon, it's kind of a fair game.
And I think that the Wild West is also closely connected to the gold rush back in the late 1800s, right? And I think Amazon is a perfect example for that right now, especially the time we're in right now. Everyone thinks they can just go and struck a big nugget of gold. Yeah.
I don't know if it's as easy as just striking the nugget, but there definitely is a lot of opportunity in this space. And, pandemic has obviously heightened e-commerce, I think, as a whole from just a penetration level. And that's really where we're seeing, it's on every news website now. You see e-commerce, a very common terminology mentioned. And so I think it's going to continue to grow, and that's what we're hopefully talking about today, is how can you leverage Amazon and know the nuances of the platform and really leverage it in your best interest.
And I think just like with the gold rush back in the days, a lot of people come in with false expectations. It is not that easy to get rich, and I think this is also where One Stone comes in. One Stone being a full-service, multi-platform e-commerce management agency company. And I think we've seen this more and more because of the complexity of the marketplaces. A lot of companies choose to outsource that kind of part. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I always say that it's not a one size fits all. Every brand, every team needs something different. And what we're seeing in this space is just that, one, to run the business requires a lot of people. You've got to have SEO, people that understand the algorithms and understand how to write in a way that encourages consumers and algorithms. But then you also have to have operations and know how to pick, pack, and ship and understand that whole world. And then you also have to have just strategy, how to work with people, how to interact with the platform. And so I think that's a really common reason why we see just an agency as a great asset sometimes, is that it's intimidating to have to hire 5 people to cover everything. And so you end up hiring one and telling them to do everything. And it's like they're an ad expert, they're a supply chain expert, and they're a marketing, and it just is really, really challenging. And so that's kind of where our model came to be. And we see Amazon and Walmart and even other platforms, depending on the brand, they just interact so much. The price scraping, price matching happenings across platform. You can fix one platform, but if you don't manage the other one, then you're kind of out of luck. And so that's really where our model came into play, where managing the ecosystem, we see it as kind of an all waters rise, where we can really help brands across the ecosystem online.
And I think this is why we're here today, and we're doing this whole webinar series, because just as you said, e-commerce is so complex. You can't be a jack of all trades in this, and you need to treat each channel individually. And this is, I think, a perfect segue into today's topic, and that is product listing optimization, and on Amazon directly, how to reach the right customers, how to get your products in this, because Amazon is a very special case. And just for you guys to know, the way we're going to do this today is similar to how we've done this in the past. Right now, you're going to get the ultimate knowledge bombs right now from Jimmy directly for the next 10, 15 minutes. Then I'm going to show you briefly on how you can take some of the advices he's given you, do this in Plitix directly to help you manage your products at scale. And then at the end, we're going to leave at least 5 minutes for Q&A. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting things because there's such a buzz around Amazon. So without further ado, Jimmy, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Let me jump in here. Okay, Tim, you want to skip to the next slide? I don't know if I have controls here.
You do, all yours.
Okay, there it goes. Okay, so we're kind of kicking off, and really what we want to talk about, fundamentals of Amazon. We're going to talk through really the pillars of where we see of how to influence the platform. And if you're a brand looking at this space, what are the levers at your disposal, and kind of what should be your prioritization of those levers. 2 caveats we always like to open up with is that the strategies that I'm going to be talking about are long-term. There are definitely short-term strategies, kind of black hat things in which you can trick the system with, but most of the time you're going to hit issues, your listings will be suspended or whatever down the road. And so what we're really talking about is how to pave the way for the long term and kind of operate in the black and the white versus the gray there. And then I always like to say it's category specific is the other caveat, is that every category has its nuances. And so know your category, and you probably do know your category well. And so that's always just an aspect, I think, as we talk through here, that's going to be interlaced. Let me jump. Sorry, I think I got a lag here, Tim, on my slides.
Let's see here. Got it. You see, guys, this is what happens when you are live. There is no such thing as the perfect presentation. As long as our tool works, I always say, I think we can deal with a little bit of delay from the webinar tool here, apologizing in advance. Does it work on your side now, Jimmy?
Yeah, let me get one more slide up here. And okay, I think we're good. So what we're kind of talking about here, you should be able to see 8 pillars of ranking is what we're talking about. And this is where we're going to camp for a little bit to really dive into what we're going to be talking about. And we're really going to drill into 3 of these in particular that we see, everyone talks about the flywheel. What we're going to be talking about today is the flywheel speed. And it's really looking at everything on here influences the Amazon flywheel. It wouldn't be an Amazon presentation if you didn't hear that term. but every one of these influences the flywheel in a different way. And we really look at it as, what's the biggest impact on the flywheel? And those are going to be the ones, as Tim and I were talking through, things that we really want to dive deeper into. But so looking at this, what our goal is to kind of simplify this into really 8 pillars that you can boil down into any category that's going to react and be, applicable to your brand. And each one of these pillars has a different level of effect on your business. And, when we look at it, the core of Amazon is really centered on product and conversion. And that is why the Amazon platform exists, is for good products to get in the hands of consumers quickly, that they enjoy. And everything about Amazon has a feedback loop built in to really ensure that what is at the top of a search is what should be the best experience for the consumer, not necessarily for the brand, right? It's a consumer first platform in that sense. And so, when we look at Amazon, it's a collection of PDPs. It's product display pages all intertwined, indexed off of search terms. And the algorithm is either, you can look at it from a standpoint of it's there to promote the best products, or it's there to weed out the worst ones. And that's really the goal of Amazon whenever you're entering any search, is that the whole thing the algorithm is built on is using really these 8 pillars to say, what is the best product that we should surface on this search term that a consumer is most likely to convert on. And so kind of baseline that we always talk about is just that to sell on Amazon, you need a good product. And I think that's something that nobody talks about. Everybody skips over that and goes straight to keywords or something else. But if your product isn't good, your reviews won't be good. You'll have issues on site. You'll have and-on cords, you name it. That everything about Amazon starts with a good product that leads to good conversion. And so the conversion piece is really important, because what we're talking about today is just that the algorithm has really shifted in a way, and has been over a long period of time, it seems like, to prioritize conversion. And what they're really interested in at the end of the day is when an eyeball lands on your page, do they purchase? Because Amazon is most interested above all else in selling product. That's how they make money on this side of the business. And so those are kind of some of the fundamentals, I think, just as we're looking at and talking through here, of that, where we're really trying to hone in on is once you have that box, good product, and you're looking through the lens of conversion, what are the things that my brand really needs to pay attention to make sure that my products are showing up whenever it comes to search terms. So the next one we're going to dive into is availability, and this it wouldn't be an Amazon webinar unless we really camped on this one for a second, because it just is so important in the sense of, if you cannot stay in stock, you cannot sell on Amazon, and that may be true across any website, but particularly in Amazon's system. Supply chain and just fulfillment operations is prioritized so much, and it's been an area that they've invested so heavily. When you look at the US market, they're pushing one day, and now they're pushing to some degree of an hour delivery window in which you can order and get at the end of the day. It's obvious that Amazon's investments are in supply chain, and that is the last kind of frontier that they're trying to close the gap on against a real store. And so we see availability just being so crucial. And I think this slide here really brings it home. And I open this as a challenge of anybody as you spend time on site, that on Amazon.com or Amazon.uk.co or whatever the website, you will never find an out of stock product in the first row on Amazon. On Amazon Fresh, you might, but on the Amazon platform, the actual retail site, I have yet to see ever an out of stock product show up as a number one on a category search term. And I think that is a simple way to describe it, but it really is true that when we look at the page, and we'll look at it here deeper when we talk through advertising, but that this is so true for you to be able to prioritize in-stock and availability, that if so many conversions are happening, say in the first 30 listings on a search term, it's that this is crucial for you to get in the top 1 to 10 spots on that page. And if you can't even get on the first row because you're out of stock or in stock capabilities, then that's an area where we say you really need to focus. And so obviously the next part of it, I think, with availability is just that there's almost a punishing that happens to a product when it does go out of stock. And what we talk about when we say that is that when you go out of stock and your competitor doesn't, the flywheel speed that I talked about earlier almost speeds up for the competitors, because now a consumer can no longer purchase your product. So disproportionately, they're purchasing a competitor product instead, which then influences their sales rank, which then influences their flywheel speed. And whenever you jump back in line and you're finally back in stock, you don't get to just jump back in at the spot in which you were. You almost have to kind of go back of the line and work your way back up. And so that's where we talk about, those days, sometimes weeks that you go out of stock and then you jump back in. It can be, we see anywhere from 5 to 10 days for you to regain the search placement that you had. And so that's almost 10 days you lost of being at the third row versus the first row. And that's pretty significant whenever you boil it down into actual sales. And so that's why we say, first and foremost, to rank on Amazon, bar none, availability, in-stock prioritization is the #1 thing I think that you can clue in on. Tim, any add-ins there?
No, please go ahead. I think we go through some questions at the end. One thing I want to mention here real quick, since I saw it on the chat, this is Amazon. We're talking Amazon only. There may be some commonalities across the different channels, but this is really, we're talking fully 100% Amazon right now.
Yep. Okay, next one we're talking through, IDQ, item data quality. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of the internal piece when you're working with Amazon. And what we're really talking about is your texts and your images in particular on your item page. Are they good? And better yet, really, do they make a consumer convert? And I think that is the piece where, we spend a lot of time testing and learning of is what we have on the site leading to the best conversion of what a product page could be. And so we look at it through the lens of what we call PRIVIC, product relevant, high volume keywords. And so that's really whenever we're looking through the lens of driving relevant traffic to product pages is first and foremost should be our priority whenever we're doing keyword research. And for a long time, the strategy was to push as many eyeballs to your item page as you can, because glance views were a really important weight in Amazon's system, and it would have short-term benefits for your product listing. But in the long term, Amazon doesn't really win when you get a bunch of eyeballs, but those eyeballs never purchase, because at the end of the day, they make money whenever you sell product. And so what we've seen is that the prioritization of conversion, so getting relevant traffic to your item pages, is really where you should be kind of camping home and making sure that the eyeballs that land on your item pages are the eyeballs that you actually want and that are actually have an intent to buy your product. And so, we talk about that as just being a key piece of kind of the first part. Product relevant is it's that you want to sell your product to the people that actually want to buy your product, or at least are in the right sphere of purchasing your product, not totally outside of the ballpark. And so the other thing is then, high volume keywords. And that's where we talk about, leveraging platform resources. And a couple of those that we're going to talk through is where do we start? Where do we start with keywording? How do we even begin to kind of form our orb of keywords? And so we always say, start with your marketing content, right? Your marketing team knows your product better than anybody else, hopefully, in the market. And so starting with that, they know why they created the product. They know why they created a blue one versus a pink one. They know why they created it with, plastic versus metal, you name it. Your marketing content, your marketing copy is always the right place to start. From there, interlace it with platform specific tools. If you're on the seller side, there's a number of tools out there. If you're on the vendor side, there's Amazon search terms. You name it. There's a lot of tools out there in which you can leverage to start to kind of start with your marketing copy and then maybe expand another 10 to 20% on keywords that you can find from there. From there, once you have your product listings up, it's anywhere and everywhere. And I think this is where people miss a lot on keywords, is that keywords can come from everywhere. There's no perfect source, and that could be Google, that could be Amazon autorefill, that could be your reviews, that could be competitor listings, it could be Google Trends, it could be, you know, TikTok and new uses for your product on TikTok. And so you name it, we encourage brands to build in a cadence of revisit and affirm is the keywords that we have in there, and the way in which we're describing the product, the way in which consumers are shopping for a product. And those are the ways in which if your reviews are starting to collect and you see information coming through reviews of hey, people are buying our product maybe for a different reason than we really think that our product should be used, that's a great area for you to clue in and either use back-end or front-end keywords to kind of adjust your product listing to go after your target market. A very relevant thing is, you know, when the pandemic started, it was referred to as coronavirus. And then as we progressed, it's called COVID-19. And it's like, as you learn more information, things change. As you gather more information, your knowledge about it changes, you become more informed, and so naturally you know more, and your search for it changes. And so I think that that's just like a hyper relevant for everybody on here, is that has changed over the course of the year, and in the exact same words, keywords change over time, and the way people find products changes over time. So lastly, the part that I always have to make a caveat for is that it's great if your IDQ is perfect in the back end, but if it's not right on the front end, and what's actually showing to the consumer isn't what you actually inputted in the back end, then all of your work is moot, because what a consumer is actually seeing isn't what you inputted, and therefore leading to a poor conversion. And so always build in a cadence to make sure that what's going on in the front end actually displayed to the consumer, particularly on your phone. Make sure that that is where you are looking continually, either with technology and or your actual eyes, but make sure that you're checking those, because we see Amazon change PDPs often and bring attributes to the top that maybe weren't always at the top, or bring bullets to the top, reorganize, maybe prioritize images over bullets, you name it. You've got to be clued into what your item pages are actually looking like. And so I always say start every day with top searches, item pages, your top items bookmarked. Anytime you open up your browser, you see your top item pages, and it's a quick 30-second check for you to actually have a mental connection and see what's going on these pages, and is anything changing. And so last bit then we're going to hammer through is really the advertising piece. And this is an area where we've just seen Amazon shift focus, shift prioritization here, and really invest a lot. And so you know, we talk about spend money to make money, and it really is becoming a platform where I never encourage brands to just spend because you have to, but it definitely can be a really, really strong lever. Again, what we're talking about today is a really important lever in the equation of ranking on Amazon. And so great little graphic we have here, if I flip to the next slide, is a search term water bottle. And what we're looking at, you know, purple is your paid searches, your green is your curated, and then your orange is your organic. And so your organic results. And so what you're seeing is in the top 30 listings on the search term water bottle, and this is on Amazon US, in the top 30 listings, only 12 of them were quote unquote free. Or organic, you know, where your IDQ and everything that we're talking about today, your availability comes into play. The rest of them are either curated from outside resources, or they are 100% paid through pay-per-click, sponsored brand, sponsored product on Amazon. And so just let that sink in a sense of that you've got a third of the page that all your other work that we just talked about with IDQ actually shows up organically. And so you can buy your way into almost 2/3 of the page, but a third of it only can come for free. And so I think that that's just an important piece that I never again encourage brands to just throw money at this, because it can just get, you know, Amazon will gladly take your money to advertise your product, but we really encourage brands to take your goals as a brand and prioritize through the lens of what are our company goals, our company objectives, and use that to really steer how you advertise on site. Don't make it just a ROAS goals is your number one lens that you're looking through. Look through the lens of what is our brand trying to accomplish this year, and then maybe tie a ROAS goal to that. And so we look at it as a phenomenal way for you to leverage, particularly for new items, as well as a conquesting campaign for you to really gain market share. That advertising is probably one of the most useful tools you can use to get your product in the hands of consumers, as well as to really help steer the consumer purchase pattern, to help them find products that they may not have found through that IDQ organic search place. Leverage your advertising arm to really help a consumer find products that they may have seen on TikTok. They're searching for it differently on TikTok than they are on Amazon. But that's really how you can leverage advertising, I think, to win in that sense. All right. Talking through the next part, Tim's got sirens going on his end. So really, we kind of want to summarize, boil all the information down here. And I think the main points we want to bring home, and I think these hopefully are really tangible for you, of just kind of the lens to look through this, is that each platform has a different algorithm. And so while we're talking through Amazon today, is that you've got to know the priorities of each. And so, we talk about Amazon being a consumer platform, prioritizing your consumer over your customer for long-term success. And so customer obviously being platform, retailer, et cetera there. And so that's really what Amazon's interested in the most, is prioritizing, hey, are you doing what's in the best interest of our consumer? Because that's always how Amazon's reworking things, is to hopefully prioritize the consumer over your individual platform. The next piece then is obviously leverage technology to work at scale. And that's really where, the folks at Plytics, it's just so vital, is that e-commerce, and especially depending on your catalog size, can have so many things that you have to cover at one point in time, that without technology, you're just not going to be able to get it done. And so leverage technology to be able to have the right flags and right triggers for you to know when something goes wrong, versus kind of relying just solely on the manpower behind it. Last one then, nothing in e-commerce is set it and forget it. And that's just the truth of a website. They don't turn off, they don't close, they don't have hours. And so you've got to build in a cadence of revision, because these things continue to evolve and they continue to change over time. And if your mentality is just upload it, leave it, we're good, the platform is evolving, the platform is changing. And if you are not alongside with it, it's really, really easy to get kind of left behind there.
All right. Cool. That was fantastic. I appreciate the insights, Jimmy. Sorry for the little crime time intervention here. So in the next 3-4 minutes, I know we're already approaching time limit, but who cares? I really think this is super valuable, and I want to leave some room for questions. But I'm going to show you real quick right now on how you can implement, especially the data quality part with Plytics right now. Please keep the questions coming in the chat right now. We're going to get to that. I'm going to share my screen here with you right now. Looks like it's coming out nicely. And what you see here right now is the overview right now, with a couple of different completenesses at first glance. And we've talked about it last week with Dennis on Google Shopping, the completeness. If you missed it, you always have a chance to rewatch it. Also, a lot of great insights, starting with the title already, how it's so different on Google versus on Amazon. But what we're going to do today here is first, right now, let's say you have listened to this webinar and you say, okay, I want to get serious about managing my products on Amazon and really hone down on some of the parts. So we're going to set up a new completeness attribute together where we're going to include some of the most relevant information. And just like with most channels, Amazon has some that information that are required and some are optional. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure we have all the required information in things like in stock, the basic information that need to be in the product to even tick all the boxes to be accepted by Amazon in the first place. And we're going to create this attribute here, and we're going to call this Amazon required ready. And as you see here, we already have a bunch of attribute groups inside of Plytics. And here, these are some of the key information needed, and we're just going to include all of those in here to make sure that now we're going to track the progress of each of our products individually to see if they are ready for the basic things that Amazon requires. And we're going to give it a little caveat. We're going to include this in the Amazon required group here right now, because that will make the management at the product level easier later on. Now that we have those included, and this is important to keep this flexibility open. As Jimmy mentioned, what works today is not going to work tomorrow. So here you always, as the admin of this, of Plytics, you always have the option to add new things to these completeness attributes, open up new completeness attributes as you're working with different categories, and really make sure that you're staying on the pulse of time to manage your products. And what we're going to do now, we have added this completeness attribute required here to our standard view. And you see it tracks immediately some of the key information. And you see here, even though we haven't filled out anything yet, a lot of it is already included, because those are typically information that are the same across the board. You already have a lot of your content because you're using the color for your website, you're using the material, and availability, a super crucial piece to this here. And now you have a couple of options. As we've seen last time, you can include some of the informations at scale by just bulk editing, or today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the product here. And you see all the different groups. The Amazon required group here on the side gives you the overview. Okay, I have 75% apparel sizes in here, hero image is in here, but I'm missing availability and the material. So you can go in here on a individual product. Those things you can, of course, also do at scale in the overview. If you have any questions about this, of course, our support team, customer success team will happily help you set those up, train your team to do this. Cotton, already the first important piece, you see, now it's 87%. And even more important, availability, right, Jimmy? Stock, always the most important thing. You don't need the exact number. Amazon just needs to know, can we supply this product? Can we sell this? So we're going to make this in stock, and we see it's at 100%. Now we have set the foundation of our products, and from here on we start building onto this, and this is where we go into the discovery attributes in Amazon. And just like in a good cooking show, I have prepared something here already with some of the most relevant ones. And I think a very important piece here is the back-end search terms that Jimmy mentioned. The title and the description need to include relevant keywords, but they need to be consumer friendly. You don't want to have the typical keyword bloated title, because you're going to get punished for it in your ranking. So everything that you can't include in your title, you're going to include here in the keywords. This is not a black shirt, but this is definitely a t-shirt that is gray. This can be female. This is also a male shirt, and you can just add as many, also the synonyms for them, right? Some may search for it for male, men, t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie versus pullover, to really just load up all the potential options that your customers may search for this. This is definitely a t-shirt. I know we do have some Irish colleagues that like to wear shorts in the winter here in Malaga, but typically the t-shirt is more of a fall, spring, summer kind of accessory. And as we're working with the content here, we keep track of it directly, fill this up. And not everything in here is mandatory. Okay, very important. Not everything needs to be in here, but the more effort you put in, the better your results are gonna get. Jimmy, keywords, data, item data, quality. The back-end keywords, how important are they when looking at the global scale for Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, they're they're vital in the sense of there are, I always refer to our gray example of we've had a client's products that, they referred to it as gray, spelled Grey, and they didn't want it to be ever referred to as Gray. But when it comes to consumer search, there's definitely a share between the two, depending on your locale. And so, that's where it's like we can use the front end to only spell gray, Grey, but dropping the counterpart in the back end keywords is crucial, because otherwise, whenever we first uploaded this listing and you search Gray, then none of the products would show up at all, because the algorithm didn't index on it. And they had no conversions to correlate with. And so that's where, I mean, back end keywords, to your point, is it's the things that you may not want to show on the front side, but you definitely need when it comes to a consumer search pattern. The back end attribute is crucial for that to be leveraged.
Very cool. And of course, here in Plitix, you can also transform those attributes. So if you are in the UK and you're selling to the US market, or vice versa, you may just manage the attribute here at the gray Grey level, and then up on export, you change it for your title, so you can keep your management of that part at a minimum. So one thing that you haven't gone into too much detail in your talk is the enhanced content. But I know we're living in a world where an image is worth 1,000 words. And I think this is where the rich media comes in. I do have a very specific question, but I just want to touch upon this here for this part real quick, where if you're working with Amazon, you are not working in a silo. You already have a lot of your marketing material. Your marketing team is creating the lifestyle images, the different angles for it. And in here, as you're working on Amazon specifically, you can just leverage those to include those in the templates, to send it to Amazon, to make sure that you have those images in here. So if you need a new one for the image carousel here, all you got to do is link the existing ones, where you say, okay, these ones are absolutely, this one is relevant, this one is relevant as well. Let's see, this one here, to show the different angles, because again, e-commerce, you cannot feel the product, you cannot see it. So make sure that when you put the images in, it also shows a little bit of the dimensions, etc. So here, everyone in your organization can actually leverage the rich media that you already have, because that can be a make it or break kind of decision for the customer. Now, I'm going to leave it at this here. If you need more if you have any more questions, you want to get your products there, please reach out to our customer success team, to our experts in-house. From here, all you got to do is populate your template that you set up in the channels. We've gone into that part a little bit in the last webinar, so I'm not going to duplicate this here right now. Instead, I want to start with the Q&A, actually, because we're already on the rich media here right now. Jimmy, you touched upon mobile a little bit. I know the customer behavior on mobile, especially regarding images, is very, very unique on Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen, and I think this is because of consumer shift, and when you look at time spent on our phone as a whole, is that we spend a lot of times on our phone and on other apps. And so we've seen particularly on mobile of that the image carousel as a whole has become such a destination for consumers to shop. In that they're, how the mobile UI UX is set up is that you almost, on a lot of product pages, don't even cross your bullets until you're like 5 to 6 scrolls down the page. And so instead, what consumers are doing, obviously, is just swiping right and searching through the image carousel. And so, we've encouraged brands is to leverage your image carousel, not just for pictures of your product, but to tell the story of your product have an infographic in there that tells you, you know, what are your top USPs for your item, and have an infographic that tells you why your brand exists, because so many people are spending time just in those image carousels. And so you've got your title, which gets them into it, and your main hero image, and then from there it's like, if they only shop your images, can they still convert? And it's just a really simple way, I think, where brands can leverage those to be as much of a conversion driver as the actual text or enhanced content on your page. And so kind of rethinking it, it's not as prominent on desktop because it's a little bit harder, obviously, to kind of switch through images on desktop. But on mobile, it's like right in your face. The easiest thing for you to shop this listing is just to look at the pictures. And so that's an area we've seen brands really leaning in. And if you're not building infographics today, we'd strongly encourage you is to add, you know, get an infographic for your brand built out, put that on every listing, get an infographic built out for maybe your category for that item, and get that on every listing, and kind of start to chip away after that, because a ton of conversions are happening solely based off of those 8 to 10 images that you have on your product page, especially when it comes to your mobile.
Yeah, truth is, people don't like to read anymore, right? And really, it is that you can have the best enhanced content. If you don't pass that first step, people are never going to see it, right? It really
Absolutely.
Needs to be,
Yeah.
you have one chance to make a first impression, and what better way than to do it with a picture?
Yeah, and I always encourage, you know, brands, we spend a lot of time at desktops, and you know, we're working through Excel, or, you know, you name it, on a desktop, is carve out time during your day to shop on your phone, and look on your phone and search on your phone, and know, because that's, I mean, it's overwhelmingly the majority now of most conversions are happening majority on mobile, which isn't surprising, really. It's way more convenient. But it's like, if we're not spending our day to day as kind of the executioners on the site of really enabling people to shop, if we're not spending our time there, then we have a totally different view of what the consumer is actually experiencing. And so that's where we just encourage, make sure you're carving out time to spend on your actual phone, working and experiencing, you know, what the experience is like on mobile, because they're just so different. They are drastically different from a consumer experience.
There you heard it, guys. Next time your partner's complaining that you're spending too much time on your phone, you can actually say, no, honey, I'm working. I'm doing market research. Okay, I'm definitely going to use that the next time. But I think that's a good segue into a question from Dan on the chat here. How often would you recommend revisiting your listings?
Yeah, I think we try to do everything through the lens of an 80-20, and so prioritizing your top listings is the easiest way, I think, for any brand to look at this, because otherwise, you know, I'm telling you to go look at 1,000 listings a day and revisit them every day. It's like, well, there's just not enough man hours for that. And so I always encourage a weekly to bi-weekly cadence on your top items, where you are in there looking at them and doing some degree of research for your best sellers of, you know, hey, are there other things showing up? Is for some reason the brands that are sponsored and buying ad slots on my products, have they changed from this week from the week prior? And using indicators like that to understand, well, maybe something is changing in consumer pattern and consumer shopping pattern. And so that's where usually the cadence I describe, you know, when it comes to your best sellers on site, is you should be checking those items week in and week out, and kind of building in a cadence almost for you to take in information from what's going on the site, to then say, hey, do we need to revisit our listing and maybe change some of the keywords, change how our title shifted, etc. And then from there, I think for the majority of your portfolio is to build in at least a quarterly cadence in which you have some degree of process, where maybe it's just, you know, let's start with our back-end search terms, and we're gonna make sure that the search terms that we have in the back end are the search terms that we need, and there's nothing new to that. But I always try to I understand that there's a lot of work to be done in this space. So I always try to, you know, let's carve off a little bit, and that's a great place to start, is building a cadence once a quarter for your full portfolio to go through some degree of a back-end search term refresh. And that's a great place to start, I think.
And I always, and anyone that has talked to me before, I like sports analogies, and I think this is kind of like going to the gym or getting in shape. If you haven't been in a gym in 20 years, you can't tell yourself, hey, I'm going to start working out every day, 2 hours a day. It's just not going to work. So it's not enough to just go once and then say, hey, I did it, I'm done. But it's all about building this habit little by little and start doing the little things, like you said, the 80-20 rule, right, which are the most important products, put more efforts in those, and then start to kind of build your habits from there, and you're going to see the results. And once you get the first results, you're going to get more excited to start working with that as well. Cool. I think we are already way over. I really appreciate the time, and real quick, for going forward next week, actually, we're gonna have another special guest, a dear friend of Jimmy's as well. Claire Trellis is gonna join us, and we're gonna be an hour later because this is targeted. Well, here's the truth. When I first set up the time for this, I thought Walmart was gonna be very, very relevant only for the US market. And then major news broke out. Jimmy, what do you think is going to happen now with Walmart announcing that vendors outside of the US get to sell their products on Walmart Marketplace without giving too much of a spoiler?
Yeah, it's, you know, the 15 seconds is it's going to help the platform a lot from a standpoint of exposure and overall just, you know, what brands you're able to attract to the website. It really opens the door to new competition, and anytime there's competition, there's going to be challenges, but at the end of the day, usually the consumer is the one that wins. And so I think that as a whole is going to be, you know, the next 6 months, Walmart is going to be even more heightened on the landscape from a visibility perspective because of this.
And I think it gives current brands a reality check, because all of a sudden the playing field has gotten a lot bigger. Some major players are just waiting to capture that market share and eat your lunch. So if you're already selling on Walmart, you want to make sure that you keep your #1 spot or slowly creep up and don't lose track. And if you are looking into expanding there, we are going to tell you what you need to consider to really make an impact on there. So next week, April 6th at 5 p.m., so an hour later than usually, Claire is going to join us. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, to the Plitix team, or to Jimmy and his team at One Stone Solution. Final words, Jimmy, what would you tell anyone that's joined the webinar today? What's the first thing they should do once they hang up here?
First thing to do is do you have your 80-20? Do you know what items you need to be spending the most amount of time towards? And I always say, you know, pick your 80 and then maybe add in 10 more. And those are your heavy hitters, your bets that they may not be in your 80-20, but you want them to be. And if you don't have that list, you got to start looking through that lens to say, you know, when we go to IDQ, when we go to advertising, whenever we look through any of these pillars, it's looking through the lens of what can we tangibly get done today, and then build in a cadence. Get yourself some degree of a cadence where you're able to revisit things, and you're able to plan things out day by day, week by week, because otherwise it always just feels like a mountain of work and you don't know where to start. But if you plan it out and you have yourself a really tactical game plan on it, it can become really, really practical for you to dig in and get all these things done.
Wonderful. Great final words. You were supposed to say sign up for Plitix if you don't have yet, but of course I appreciate your honesty. Guys, thank you very much for joining. Jimmy, thank you very much for your time. It was, as always, a pleasure, and see you next week.